This video is brought to you by Audible. Sign up today and get your first audiobook for free using the link in the video description. But if you're not interested in audiobooks, how about the official Sonic 2022 yearly calendar? Yes, this is official and actually depicts Sonic and Tails dying. Links to both are in the video description, but hurry, offers are limited.
Dispatch, repeat the address.
211 Station Square. Suspect is considered extremely dangerous.
It's Chaos! The god of destruction!
Chaos? The same monster I saw the other day?
You're no match for Chaos! Get rid of these pests! Attack Sonic now! With all 7 emeralds in him, he'll be invincible and work for me!
On the 23rd of December 1998, Sonic Adventure released in Japan on Sega's newly released console, the Sega Dreamcast, with the United States and Europe following almost a year later, in September of 1999. Directed by Takashi Iizuka and produced by Yuji Naka, the game represents everything that has and continues to make the Sonic series great.
Oh yeah! This is happening!
The game puts players in the roles of multiple characters throughout the Sonic series on an epic adventure as they attempt to stop Dr. Eggman from powering up his newest weapon, a creature of untold power known only as Chaos. Developed by Sonic Team, the game was split into multiple gameplay styles which each told a different story and gave a unique perspective on the main game's narrative until the very final act when all the characters eventually come together for the final climax. Critical reception at the time was extremely positive. Being the first fully 3D Sonic game and a launch title for the Dreamcast, it not only sold well, but was also critically praised for being a very impressive looking video game, as well as the scale of the game being huge compared to most other titles that were out at the time. So grab your speed shoes and pick up your fishing rod. It's time to take a look back at one of the greatest video games of all time, Sonic Adventure. I'm just going to very briefly recount and completely trivialise the story, because my videos are already notoriously long and recounting the entire plot of Sonic Adventure won't help with that. A peaceful night in Station Square is shattered after police get reports of a disturbance involving an unknown creature. Police arrive and instantly open fire on the creature, but
Oh no! Our weapons are useless!
oh no! Their weapons are useless! Sonic arrives and he's able to defeat the monster. Unknown to Sonic, he's being watched by Dr. Eggman, who is using the creature in order to test its current power. Sonic, with the help of Tails, learn that the creature is actually named Chaos, and it grows in power every time it absorbs a Chaos Emerald.
With all 7 emeralds in him, he'll be invincible and work for me!
What follows is a bit of a cat and mouse race as Sonic and Tails battle to get the other Chaos Emeralds before Dr. Eggman does.
Amen.
Along the way, Sonic learns the history of Chaos and why he's such a dangerous threat. Eventually, Chaos is able to absorb all the negative energy of the Chaos Emeralds and threatens to destroy the world. But Sonic is able to absorb the positive energy of the Chaos Emeralds and is able to defeat Chaos. So at its most trivial and basic explanation, Sonic Adventure sounds like it's got a really simple story. But each character has their own unique narrative and character development thanks to compelling and very subtle visual storytelling. While some characters are done better than others, there is a lot more here than you would expect from a Sonic game. I want to discuss this more in a follow-up video, but to give you some idea, there are very few video games out there where there are still massive philosophical discussions as to if a side character sacrificed themselves or was destroyed. Because the game is so subtle with its visual storytelling, it's literally down to the player's own thoughts based on how deeply they bonded to that character. That's the kind of stuff you'd expect to find in Silent Hill, Metal Gear Solid, or the original Fallout games.
My spies told me you were resourceful.
Yet here it is in Sonic the Goddamn Hedgehog. The development history of the game is both incredible and also just a little bit messy. Despite the success of 2D Sonic on the Sega Mega Drive Genesis Entertainment System, the transition to 3D had been fraughted with problems. Many early attempts to make a 3D Sonic title were either cancelled or just didn't quite resonate with both fans and critics, with one very minor exception. Yet Sega really wanted a 3D Sonic game, and development into what would become Sonic Adventure originally started with a few early conceptual prototypes running on the Sega Saturn. There's no footage of these prototypes, but in recent years, Sega have actually shared a few still images of these concepts. Despite the conceptual demos never being released either officially or unofficially, there is a way to get an idea as to what it would be like to play this. The video game Sonic Jam actually contains a small 3D hub world which was made using elements from the early Saturn Sonic Adventure prototypes, so if you are desperate to experience the early Sonic Adventure demos, definitely give that game a try. It's quite a decent insight into what could have been. But with the Saturn not selling as well as its competitors, Sega decided to rapidly increase development on the Dreamcast. Most major projects were shifted with the Dreamcast in mind, including Sonic Adventure. A core team of Sega's most experienced and talented staff, including Yuji Naka, Kazuyuki Hoshino, Tetsu Kitano, and Takashi Iizuka, were brought together to create a Sonic game that was far more detailed and realistic compared to previous Sonic titles. Initially, discussions involved Sonic visiting jungles, cities, and even the beach, all of which would be recreated in what was then high detail. But as talks began, a problem quickly presented itself which threatened this vision. How could the developers create such environments in accurate detail when no one on the development team had even visited the areas that they wanted Sonic to explore? In what was a rare instance for game development back then, Sonic Team decided to take a small world tour to numerous countries in order to get inspiration for the game, visiting locations such as Mexico and even Peru. Well, how about that? A bunch of inexperienced travelers going to visit a wide range of exotic locations. I'm sure nothing is going to go wrong with that plan. Oh, those are some very angry monkeys. Oh, Mr. Naka, please leave that snake alone. I wonder what lives in here. That's a giant spider. Well, at least nobody has gotten hurt yet. Oh god. Yeah. Sonic Adventure's development did that? Well, despite the need for oxygen, Sonic Team still took hundreds of photos and even video on the trip. They even brought along a Sonic and Knuckles plush which they posed in photographs and videos in order to give the developers more inspiration for locations within the game. While some photos are indeed quite stunning, many of which were clearly used as an influence for the game, even what seems to be the most mundane of everyday activities were also taken and used, such as this photo of people waiting to board a train. But for Sonic Team, one of the most interesting parts of the trip became a major inspiration for the game was the team's discovery of the sport sandboarding. Nobody at Sonic Team had ever seen anything like it, and they were all amazed. Takashi Iizuka is actually quoted as saying,
"While we were in Peru, we noticed some people boarding on sand dunes. We were so impressed by this. We had no idea this kind of sport actually existed. It was so new and exciting for us to see this, we knew we had to add this element to our game. And we figured that Tails, if anyone, was the most appropriate character to use."
During the trip, they visited several old temple ruins and even filmed themselves climbing up ancient steps in an attempt to show the programmers and designers what it's actually like to physically climb a steep surface like this. So there was something else which appears to have been used as inspiration, and I've never seen anyone else point this out. It seems that the clothes that the developers were actually wearing on this trip were used as an inspiration for certain elements in the game. During Big the Cat's campaign, you encounter some really strange looking fish. Well, take a look at this one in particular. Now compare it to the t-shirt that Yuji Naka is wearing. It seems too similar to be just mere coincidence. As fun as the trip was, it wasn't without its hazards. Some members of Sonic Team actually came down with heat stroke. One member actually collapsed from altitude sickness and required emergency oxygen. On a number of occasions, the team even encountered wild and sometimes dangerous animals, such as monkeys and even a giant tarantula when getting research from within a jungle. Some of the pictures that were taken were so good, they actually ended up as textures in the video game. You can see this yourself quite clearly in some of the temple and jungle environments. With the increased emphasis on creating a realistic and detailed world, Sonic Team made the decision to redesign each of the Sonic characters to indicate that this was a new era for Sonic. With guidance from Naoto Oshima, artist and designer Yuji Uekawa took inspiration from real-world graffiti and pop art to help mold what would become modern Sonic. Sonic became taller and sleeker in appearance, which helped give him a more athletic look that also helped emphasise his natural speed and agility. Eggman was also given a new look. He now wears a modified lab coat that helps convey the idea that he's a scientific engineer. He was also given a pair of flight goggles in conjunction with his standard glasses due to the fact that he's both a scientist and a pilot.
Fighting! I am Dr. Robotnik, the greatest scientific genius in the world!
New characters who made their debut in Sonic Adventure also saw Sonic Team take inspiration from both pop culture and their past titles. E102 Gamma was initially based on the Egg Robo enemies from Sonic & Knuckles, and Big the Cat's initial concepts were inspired by Totoro from Studio Ghibli's My Neighbor Totoro. Why yes, that is a very difficult sentence from someone from Yorkshire to pronounce correctly. But along with the new design came the desire to change the gameplay. Each character would have their own unique gameplay style. Takashi Iizuka was very insistent that this would help change and break the pace of the game, as well as attract newer fans to the series. The creation of new characters also allowed Sonic Team to finally use gameplay mechanics which had been previously considered too taboo for Sonic, such as the robot Gamma being the first playable Sonic character who could actually shoot, which had been a common request from fans at the time. Another was the character Big the Cat. Unlike other characters who were always ready to act and constantly on the edge, Big would go at his own leisurely, laid-back pace. As development started and the project began to near its official announcement, many news outlets began to report on leaks and rumours that a new Sonic game was in development, but fortunately most of these were wildly inaccurate, such as the game being a full-on RPG, meaning Sega had most of their surprises intact. The game was eventually revealed at the 1998 Tokyo International Forum. A large crowd of fans and press were invited, and the game was revealed in public for the first time. The reception was incredible. Most at the time couldn't believe the jump from the previous generation of titles to what Sonic Adventure was offering. The presentation was also part rock concert, with Crush 40 providing samples of music that would appear in the final game. With a successful announcement in Japan, attention then turned to the international release. Sonic Team realised that the game would need to be localised for the West. So English voice actors were cast, and even a Sonic team was set up in the United States in order to oversee the localisation efforts. However, it seems that not everything went according to plan with the English localizations. In recent years, several of the English voice actors have come out to suggest that they were given very little direction, absolutely no reference material to look at, and in some cases, they were only allowed to do one take for each of their individual lines, which is why some of the English voice delivery doesn't quite match the scene, or in some cases, just sounds weird.
Let's investigate, wanna?
An example of what I mean can be found in this scene. Take a listen to Tails' inflection when he says, "Come on, Sonic." It just sounds a bit odd and doesn't quite flow that well from the previous line.
That means his 2 to our 1, and that's not good. Come on, Sonic, we need to get busy!
And then there's this example. Now, despite you fighting a boss that is literally made of water, it's actually very difficult to drown in this game. But when you do, it sounds weird. It sounds like my cats are throwing up. Mind you, it wasn't plain sailing for the Japanese voiced cast either. Was it, Amy?
Sonic-da!
Despite the problems with the localization, the game was eventually completed and released. So let's take a look at what the gameplay was like when you actually picked it up. So I'm going to keep this section quite criminally brief. The reason being is that this game has more gameplay styles than times that Omega the Robot has been resurrected from the dead. There's quite a lot that I'd like to say about the gameplay and analysis of it, hence my intention of doing a follow-up. And that's my cue to say you should like this video and smash that subscribe and bell notification button. But for a brief overview, let's just start with Sonic. Sonic stages take up the bulk of the gameplay experience, and these laid the foundation of what would follow in terms of 3D Sonic design for the next 20 years. Sonic has most of his recognisable moves from the classic titles, such as Spin Dash, but now also sports other unique moves such as a homing attack, and through upgrades, the Lightspeed Dash. Most of Sonic's gameplay give the player a third-person view, with the emphasis being to navigate through a stage at high speed. Often these sections are interrupted with some basic platforming, which requires a slower, more methodical, precision-based gameplay. That said, often the camera will switch to present a more dramatic or visually incredible set-piece-like moment. There are a few automated sections in the game, but for the most part the player is in complete control at all times as Sonic and isn't limited by invisible barriers or automated restrictions. If I see somewhere I want to go, I can try and get there. There's a lot more to say, but that's for the follow-up video. For now, let's move on to Tails. Upon unlocking Tails, you might feel a little bit disappointed. His levels are nearly identical to Sonic's with only a few minor changes to the layout, and sometimes they're much shorter in length. Which does have that horrible moment when you as the player realise all the other campaigns are going to be like this. But gameplay wise is very different. For starters, Tails lacks the spin dash in favour of the ability to fly. He's able to do this for short periods of time, and his core gameplay, while similar to Sonic, has a unique take on it. Unlike Sonic, where the goal is make it to the end of the stage as fast as possible, Tails' goal is make it to the end of the stage and beat the other guy. Tails' gameplay adds a racing element to simply beating the stage. In terms of design, it's a really nice symbiotic relationship between Tails' actual gameplay and his narrative within the story. That being, not just a sidekick who simply follows Sonic around, but someone who's able to stand on their own and be their own individual hero. So whilst the racing element is a nice twist, it's not completely unique. Knuckles, however, is the most dramatic change. Unlike the previous two gameplay styles, stages in Knuckles' campaign take place in smaller arenas for the most part. They involve the player searching for emerald fragments. Gameplay takes the form of a hot and cold mechanic, in which rudimentary radar pings when Knuckles gets close to an emerald shard. Each stage has 3 shards, and they can be collected in any order. The problem with this gameplay mechanic is that the emerald shards appear in randomized locations, which does present a problem when you're attempting a speedrun. Outside of his core gameplay, Knuckles has the ability to glide, throw punches, and even climb walls. I'm never really sure what the consensus is on the gameplay for Knuckles in Sonic Adventure, just that more often than not people will say, well, it's not as bad as Sonic Adventure 2, which makes a few really bad changes to the emerald hunting system. But that's a conversation for another day. For now, let's move on to Amy. Outside of a few spin-off titles, Sonic Adventure marks the first time that Amy Rose was a playable character, and her gameplay at the time took a lot of fans by surprise. In Sonic Adventure, Amy is constantly being pursued by a robot named Zero. He's her nemesis for the entire campaign. This robot is too strong for her to destroy, but she can temporarily stun it thanks to her Pico Pico hammer, which she also uses to perform very high jumps which show off her acrobatic abilities. The gameplay is very similar to that of Sonic and Tails in that you must make it to the goal as quickly as possible, but the constant pursuit aspect gives the player a constant threat that's always trying to stop you. So it's different enough that it's not a complete retread of the first 2 campaigns, but it's Big's campaign where things... well, I really hope you like fish. Big's gameplay is basically a promotional demo for Sega Bass Fishing, also available on the Dreamcast. His stages take place in small areas where he has to fish in order to catch his friend Froggy. He's a slow, bulky character who most players will utterly hate playing as. It's such a departure from all the other gameplay styles so far, and the fishing mechanic is quite clunky to get used to at first. For most players, this is their least favourite campaign. Even the head of Sonic Team, Takashi Iizuka, has apologised for Big's gameplay in recent years. It's that notorious. Even journalists at the time didn't quite know how to react to Big. Check out this clip and pay close attention to the reaction of the journalist when he is told the ways of Big the Cat.
A giant cat that is actually going around doing a lot of fishing.
A giant fishing cat, named Big. A giant fishing cat. A giant fishing cat, named Big. A giant fishing cat, named Big who's looking for his frog friend.
Yeah.
The reaction is what I would call bemused horror. But whilst the gameplay in Sonic Adventure for Big is unpopular, as a character, and certainly with his actual narrative in the game, it's one of the strongest. Over the years, fans have really warmed to him, and he's become a strong fan favourite character. Let's move on to the next campaign, Gamma. So you might have noticed that in this section I haven't really talked about the narrative or the character development of each of the characters. I've strictly given a very brief explanation of each of the gameplay. And I have a feeling that by not doing that right now, I'm about to give my favourite character in the game a really big injustice. Because in Sonic Adventure, Gamma's story isn't just an example of how you do a compelling and engaging storyline and character development for a minor side character with not much dialogue, it's arguably the example example. When you start Gamma's storyline, you'll quickly notice just how quiet it is. Gamma himself rarely speaks, and the other robots that he's with also don't speak to him. Gamma's characterization comes from his gestures, his actions, even something like the speed he walks in a cutscene, how he holds his posture, and something as basic as a look or a glance to another character. It tells you everything you need to know about his inner turmoil and conflict about turning against his master. In most recent Sonic games, characters tell you how they're feeling, what they're going through, by bursting into a room and literally announcing it.
Sonic! Tails! I was so worried. I thought you were...
You worry too much. Look, I'm perfectly fine.
Gamma communicates this by how long he holds eye contact with another character. It's so subtle, yet communicates better than any piece of dialogue. Take these two cutscenes which occur straight after each other. Gamma sees the fate of the robot Beta. He's been taken apart by Eggman. Gamma learns from this scene that failure equals destruction. In the very next scene, he enters the holding cells and has a conversation with Amy. Amy's able to establish a connection to him, and then something really interesting happens. Amy walks towards Gamma. She's completely unarmed, behind bars, and Gamma is armed with a cannon. Gamma backs off and raises his hand as if he's scared.
Why not help us out instead?
Don't know why this is significant? You can't do this in the game. The player can't walk backwards, and you certainly can't raise your arm like this character does in this cutscene. These actions are done outside of the normal control scheme for that character. Even when he agrees to let her out, look at how he holds himself. He looks terrified because he realizes he's just failed Eggman. If Eggman finds out, it means his destruction. And not once did he communicate any of this verbally. It was all done through silent gesture. Unfortunately, his gameplay is about as deep and complex as a paddling pool. Okay, so it's not bad, in fact I do actually have a lot of fun from it, it's just not very deep and engaging. So the final playable character is Supersonic. There's really not much to say here, you just play him in a boss fight. Gameplay wise, you have to build up and hit chaos at top speed in order to cause damage, whilst simultaneously keeping track of your rings in order to avoid losing a life. So there is another gameplay style which most people leave for the end game. The Chao Garden. Chao are small little creatures which you feed berries and let them play with other small animals in order to raise their stats so you can race them and unlock bonuses in the game. You can even send them to the Dreamcast VMU device and play a small minigame with them. Well, that doesn't sound too bad. Now that I've got my ultimate creature of destruction, let's head to the races. I don't like this. I'm really not a fan of Chao racing. It's very popular with a lot of people, but not with me. You have very little influence, if any at all, on the outcome of a race, and it takes a very long time to actually raise your Chao to a competitive standard. There's even a mandatory 3 to 5 hour wait time for your Chao to evolve into an adult. But here's the catch, you have to physically be in the Chao Garden for this time to take effect, and there is nothing else to do in this room other than sit and wait in real time. And you need to do this in order to have a chance at winning the harder races. If you're one of these people who complains about the monotony of Big's campaign, I don't see how you can possibly defend this. I'm not going to go into detail on this because I have another video on my channel that does that. I talk about the Chao Gardens and how I think they can be improved, so please take a look at that one if you are interested in hearing my thoughts on it. But for now, let's move on to another area of the game which most people agree is awesome: the music. Sonic Adventure has probably one of the best and most recognisable soundtracks in Sonic gaming history. Primarily composed by Jun Senu, the soundtrack sees numerous performers and artists providing both music and lyrics to the game. The soundtrack has been released multiple times over the years, but the original release was for a long time the only way to get this CD, and as a result it was heavily bootlegged. But thankfully, in 2011 for Sonic's 20th anniversary, an official re-release was printed. In recent years, a vinyl soundtrack collection has also been produced produced and released. It's also available on a number of digital music stores, and several songs over the years have been included on various compilation CDs. One of the most iconic songs has to be Open Your Heart, performed by Crush 40's Johnny Gioeli. It's arguably the modern Sonic anthem and is constantly requested to be played at Sonic conventions, which always gets fans singing along to it. One of my favourite tracks from the album has to be Lazy Days, which was performed by Ted Poley. You just can't help but smile and feel your mood being lifted as you listen to this song. But I think my favourite piece of the entire soundtrack has to be the theme of Gamma. I think this track fits his character especially more than any other. The opening begins with an almost industrial-like sound. The beat makes me think of giant pistons moving in unison. It makes me think of a machine being assembled and activated. And you can even make out a bird song as if it's the Flicky family that power the E-Robot series. The piano keys sound almost like a lonely march, as if he's just lost. It almost symbolises the internal struggle that he's going through between obeying Eggman and his desire to become self-aware. But the most haunting moment of this track is also linked directly to his ending. For years, fans have debated how Gamma is actually destroyed. Did he finally achieve full self-awareness and freedom from Robotnik's control, which means he was able to self-sacrifice? Or was it damage sustained in the final fight? Whilst it's not a definitive answer, if you listen to his theme, there is one big clue. Gamma's theme at first seems to be the only one that doesn't contain lyrics, but if you listen carefully, you can just make out one audible line. It was my pleasure, ready to die. Add on to this the way the song ends. It's the reverse of how it started. You hear the bird-like sounds as it's released from the machine, the music slowly fades, and Gamma shuts down for the last time. And why not commemorate that sacrifice by buying this toy? Let's talk about the promotion and merchandise of the game. By releasing Sonic Adventure as a launch title for the Dreamcast, the game received a huge promotional campaign to help push both sales of the system and the game itself. Aside from magazine and poster campaigns, there were a variety of TV spots released worldwide, but one of the most notorious was a Japanese advert involving a Sonic toy plush line that went on their own mini adventures. Don't worry, I'm sure Sonic's gonna be fine! A cast of very impressive looking mascot characters based on the Sonic Adventure designs were commissioned and appeared at E3 1999 and a number of promotional events in Japan. The game also saw not one but two comic adaptations. Both Archie and Fleetway Comics produced their own adaptations which greatly differ from one another. Whilst Archie tells a more faithful adaptation to the game, Fleetway starts similar.
Oh no! Our weapons are useless!
Then takes its own unique approach. Chaos looks really different to how he appears in the video game. He looks more like a spirit or some kind of demon. It's really scary to look at. To complement this design, the comic also gives him a unique ability that isn't in the game. In the Fleetway adaptation, Chaos is able to make people terrified of him to the point where they just crumble to their knees. An entire issue also delves into the ancient Echidna tribe backstory, something that we only saw fleeting glances of in the video game, and there's even in-comic explanations for both Sonic and Eggman's design changes from their classic to modern counterparts. The Fleetway Sonic Adventure storyline even killed off a long-running character, something which had never happened before up until this issue. Between the two comic adaptations, I have to say I enjoy the Fleetway story more, just because it's such a unique take and adaptation. Whilst it uses elements from the game, you can never guess what's going to happen next due to it being such a different adaptation. Sadly, Gamma is absent from the story, and Big only appears in a one-panel cameo, but it's a very well done and unique adaptation. I do highly recommend seeking this one out. So I do want to go over the Archie adaptation just a little bit. The adaptation is set across multiple issues, with the main bulk of it taking place in Sonic Super Special number 13. For the most part, it's extremely faithful to the game. The bulk of the plot pretty much follows Sonic's storyline with little deviation. Even the main Archie created characters are kept more or less out of the entire story. But one really strange change that they make to the plot is in the final battle with Super Sonic and Perfect Chaos. It seems to have been inspired by the ending of the movie Jaws 2. In Jaws 2, Chief Brody defeats the shark by luring it into an electric cable. How does he do this? He hits the electric pipe with a wooden oar in order to attract the shark. The shark then charges at him, bites the cable, Brody jumps out of the way at the last second, and the shark is killed via electrocution. In Archie Comics' Sonic Adventure adaptation, Sonic is given a copper pipe by Princess Sally and he heads towards a power generator. What he does with this pipe isn't shown, but he does bounce between two pieces of electrical equipment, which ends up luring Chaos. And at the last moment, when Chaos charges him, the generator powers on, Chaos bites onto some electrical power cables, Super Sonic moves out of the way, and Chaos is electrocuted and knocked out to his first form. Essentially, completely defeated. When I first read this, I actually laughed and said, they just did a Jaws 2. They copied the ending from Jaws 2. Like I said earlier, the adaptation isn't a bad one, but I definitely prefer Fleetway's adaptation, just for how original it is. A TV adaptation was also produced. A cartoon series, Sonic X's first episode, offers an explanation to fans who wondered, how did Sonic go from a seemingly humanless planet to a planet full of humans? And whilst the series is slow to get started, eventually there is a very loose adaptation of Sonic Adventure, which ends up being a series highlight. If you want to watch the Sonic X adaptations, you can either seek out the DVDs, but they're quite pricey as they're only available on the second-hand market, or get a Netflix or Amazon Prime subscription. However, Amazon does appear to have all the seasons, whereas Netflix is limited to just the first two. Multiple Sonic Adventure toy lines were produced, along with supporting merchandise for the game. Some of the more highly sought-after items include action figures, a commemorative pin badge set, and even these extremely rare Sonic Adventure promotional band-aids.
Mr. Mechanic.
Yes, YouTube user Coffee Dubs?
Are these band-aids the only reason you made this video?
I refuse to answer that question. But of course, we have the most sought-after items of all, the plushies! These are some of the most expensive and highly sought-after Sonic plushies of all time, and Sega threw them out of an aeroplane.
Okay, Sonic, go.
Whilst I was actually editing this together, I noticed something a little bit fun about this particular commercial. When they first throw the plush out of the plane, it actually hits its head on the side of the cabin, and they even put a little boop sound effect in as he hits his head. Take a listen.
Sonic, go.
Shortly after the release of the game, Sega produced some DLC and hosted some small events based on it. I've already covered the Sega European Speed Challenge, which added Reebok DMX shoes to the Emerald Coast, but other events and competitions were also held in which gamers could win actual physical prizes. Cosmetic DLC was also added in the form of Christmas trees and even Halloween decorations as part of more seasonal celebrations. A promotional tie-in with Burger King was also planned, but it was cancelled before the toys entered the manufacturing stage. Concepts showed that the toys would have closely matched moments and sequences from the game, such as Sonic snowboarding, a toy that showcased Knuckles' ability to glide, Tails in the tornado, Big catching Froggy, and Amy looking like that. Gamma would have also had a figure which actually walked on its own and even a light-up targeting scope, and even Eggman would have also received his own little figure. Sonic Adventure has seen several different ports over the years. The original was developed for the Dreamcast, but following Sega's exit from the console market, a decision was made to port the game to the Nintendo GameCube. Re-released as Sonic Adventure DX, the game saw some technical updates and additional content added to the base game, such as a small cameo of Cream the Rabbit and even an extra mission mode, as well as the ability to play as Metal Sonic. The DX port also added a bunch of fully playable 8-bit Sonic games that would unlock as the player completed more of the main game and the extra content. This was also the first time that these titles saw a release outside of their original Master System and Game Gear releases. But some fans don't like the DX port as much compared to the original Dreamcast version. Whilst it does contain a lot of new content and various bug fixes, the game also changed the way character models look to those used in Sonic Adventure 2, and some stages and textures look completely different to how how they appeared in the Dreamcast version. One of the best examples I can give with this is what happened to the Ice Cap stage. It went from having its own unique blue environment to just a generic white ice environment. A few of you are now rushing to the comments box to write down every single other reason as to why the DX version isn't as good. Please do so, it helps boost engagement. The game would also see a re-release on the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. Again, this was the DX version, but in a controversial move, the actual extra content that the DX pack brought wasn't available unless you paid for a downloadable content pack. So if you wanted to play Mission Mode and Metal Sonic, you had to first buy the base game and then spend more money to get the DX DLC pack. This was also the first version of the game to receive official widescreen support, but it was in the form of a blue border that appeared around the game, and it also included achievements and trophies, and there were also avatar rewards for Xbox 360 players. Whilst fans appreciated the ability to replay the game on modern systems, many felt that this was actually quite a lazy port given the lack of effort made to give it a true HD experience, and that at the end of the day, it was just the DX version with the mission mode being offered as paid for DLC. Technically, you can get this version of the game on the PS4 thanks to PS Now, and it's also available on Xbox One via backwards compatibility. And of course, there's also the PC version, which opens the game up to mods and other fan-made enhancements. So it's a very easy game to get these days. So you might now be thinking, well, that's every version of Sonic Adventure covered. Well, there was actually another version of Sonic Adventure made, and I'm willing to bet that the vast majority of you have never played this version, and some of you have probably never even heard of it. So, who made this other mysterious version of Sonic Adventure that I've never heard of? These guys did.
Take some Hedgehog tonic and go bionic and give Dr. Robotnik a dose of his own medicine.
Now, I think it's safe to say the majority of you watching this video have probably heard of
Tiger LCD video games.
Tiger Electronic Handhelds. They're quite notoriously bad LCD handheld games that were released in the early 90s, and even back then, they weren't very good. So you can imagine how out of date this technology was in 1999. Which is why 1 year later, in the year 2000, Tiger Electronics decided to release a handheld LCD version of Sonic Adventure. In case you were wondering, yes, this is an official port of Sonic Adventure. The design of this differs radically from traditional Tiger LCD games, and it more resembles a tabletop arcade cabinet. It's decorated with the Sonic Adventure logo and images of Sonic and Eggman around the side. You can only play through a very reduced version of Sonic's campaign, and considering that this is a Tiger Electronics toy, it's actually surprisingly decent. There isn't any music, but it does have the actual console sound effects. Obviously they don't sound that great, but it's Tiger Electronics, what were you expecting? In terms of gameplay, it plays a little bit like an on-rails platformer. You hold up on the D-pad and Sonic moves through the stage, but the gameplay does get mixed up a little bit, thanks to the inclusion of boss battles. Yeah, I was quite surprised to learn this as well. There's actually boss stages in this game. So I need to give a huge thank you to fellow YouTuber Tales from iDef here, who agreed to record some new footage of the game for us. The first thing that you're asked to do is enter your name, because this game has a rudimentary high score system. The very first stage is exactly like the console version. You enter a boss fight and you fight Chaos. You then progress to the Emerald Coast, where you'll end up fighting the Egg Hornet. And then you enter the Windy Valley, at which you then fight Knuckles. Other stages that you play include Speed Highway, Ice Cap, Red Mountain, the Sky Deck, and eventually Final Egg. And the final boss is the Egg Viper. Now, it sounds very standard affair so far for any LCD electronics game, but this is where I echo back to this being quite a decent little device for what it is. You see, this port of Sonic Adventure actually has a couple of surprises. For one thing, there's cheat codes and even a hidden boss rush mode. It turns out that on the screen where you enter your name, you can actually enter a couple of cheat codes at this point. One of them gives invincibility, the other one gives full rings, the other one lets you start with extra lives, and if you enter boss, you actually unlock the boss rush mode. And much like a lot of modern video game software, this game actually has a bug. Yeah, it turns out that one of the cheat codes doesn't actually work when you enter it, which is not great. And despite this being just an LCD port of Sonic Adventure, it's ironically the most expensive version of the game, just down to how rare the device actually is. In fact, there are only 2 known copies of it in existence, but some fans swear that they remember seeing boxes of them stacked high in stores in the early 2000s. Yet today, there's virtually no trace of them on the second-hand market. Is it worth buying? Unless you're one of these Sonic collectors who must have all the weird stuff.
Well, that's me, isn't it?
I'd honestly avoid this. It's a really nice novelty to have, but it was barely worth it in the year 2000, let alone today. So you might now be thinking, that's gotta be every version of the game, right? Well, it's worth mentioning that there was another version of Sonic Adventure planned on a console called the Zeebo. What was the Zeebo? Well, the Zeebo was a Brazilian-made console which released in 2009, and according to recent research conducted by Cyberwolf JV, a version of Sonic Adventure was actually planned for the console. However, when the console was finalised, it was severely underpowered, and it could barely run mobile phone games from 2009, let alone an entire Dreamcast title, so the planned port was eventually scrapped. But if you would like an idea as to what it would have both looked and sounded like, here is Resident Evil 4 running on a PlayStation 2. And now, here is Resident Evil 4 running on the Zeebo. Just imagine that, but with perfect chaos. Upon release, critical reception for the game was extremely high, with most outlets giving it 9s and 8s out of 10s. GameStop said that the game redefined the genre and was a must-have for the Dreamcast, praising Sonic Team themselves by saying they'd produced a 3D experience unlike anything to date. Games Master magazine noted how Chaos was the coolest boss ever, and praised the first fight despite it being so basic. The lowest score I could find at the time was by Game Revolution, who reviewed the game shortly after launch. They awarded it a 7 out of 10. They complained that the songs and the soundtrack was awful, and that the high-speed stages and the game didn't offer much compared to other 3D platformers at the time. IGN's Brandon Justice echoed some of these complaints, but he was more positive, saying that Sonic Adventure does a lot of things right and you'll be very impressed with it, but at the same time, there are a few moments where the game will become a bit incoherent. Despite this, he ended his review by saying that the game was a great title, but he did have problems that kept it from being perfection. But the strangest review by far comes from Electric Playground. Whilst Victor Lucas praised the game, giving it a 9 out of 10, Tommy Tallarico didn't like it very much at all. Whilst he did say that the game looked beautiful, he compared the gameplay to a bovine.
Yeah, it looks great, but it plays like a cow. Plays like a cow. Plays like a cow.
Fans didn't have to wait too long for a sequel. Sonic Adventure 2 was released on the Dreamcast in 2002. The sequel changed a lot from the original. It got rid of the hub worlds and became a more linear experience, with stages accessed via a world map. Unlike Sonic Adventure, which saw multiple campaigns, the sequel had 2 campaigns split up between multiple characters. One focused on Sonic and his friends, the other focused on Eggman and his band of villains. So I know I've spoken for a while now, but I probably should mention this. The third Sonic Adventure game.
Perfectly disgraceful. The man ought to be prosecuted.
Sonic Adventure 3 is a minefield of discussion and contention in the Sonic fanbase. Whilst there has been no game released with that title, multiple games have started out with that title, and one came very close to actually being called it upon release. The follow-up to Sonic Adventure 2 was Sonic Heroes, and in an interview with the now defunct website 1UP.com, according to Takashi Iizuka, that game actually did have the title of Sonic Adventure 3 at one point. The reason for the change, according to Iizuka, was that they wanted to try and appeal to people who may not have been into Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 and might want to try out a new Sonic game. Shadow the Hedgehog, the spin-off Sonic title, was also given the title Sonic Adventure 3, and some websites and forums, which are still up to this date, clearly state that the game was announced as Sonic Adventure 3 Shadow of a Hedgehog. But most controversially, some Sonic fans actually believe that Sonic 06 was supposed to have that title, or was planned to be at least a spiritual sequel of the sorts, just down to the fact that so many elements from the original Sonic Adventure game are in this one, such as the Egg Carrier, the Emerald Coast, hub worlds, and multiple campaigns, and also the fact that they share the same development mentality. Remember how I said the plan for Sonic Adventure was to make a Sonic game as realistic as possible? Well, the exact same developmental mentality was applied for Sonic 06. Look at the realistic designs of Eggman, and even the redesigns of the Sonic cast themselves. They're far more realistic than anything that's come before. There's even another possible connection that I discovered when I was researching this video. During Sonic's campaign, when you get the shoe upgrade for the Lightspeed Dash, this guy tells you that his son is crazy about shoes. Well, if you wait around for a bit, his son actually turns up, and sure enough, he really is mad about shoes. You know, Sonic 06 also has a guy like this kid, but slightly older, who also really likes shoes, wears a similar style of clothing, also has sunglasses, a similar clothing colour scheme, and who also does that arm gesture when talking.
Hey.
Oh my. Yeah, I freely admit that this is one hell of a stretch, but it's a bloody fun one, especially when you take into account the approximate age of this kid and the shoe shop guy. You realise they may have actually aged them in real time between the game's release dates. Like I said, it's a big stretch, but a bloody fun one.
Hey.
I know what you're thinking. This is Sonic the Hedgehog. No game in the series would ever have such a tiny Link. Really? Well, take a look at this. This is the ending screen for Amy's campaign. Keep this image in mind. We'll come back to it in just a few moments. Well, anyway, according to the History of Sonic book, Sonic Unleashed also had the title of Sonic Adventure 3, and in Japan it was even released as Sonic World Adventure. You can clearly see the connection and the intent to link this to the adventure titles with that one. Personally, I have a lot to say about the possibility of a third Sonic adventure, but I feel that there has to be a clear working methodology for 3D Sonic first before Sonic Team starts looking into giving any game a title which they know will generate artificial hype and expectations if their plan and execution for that title isn't going to meet the same critical reception of the original. I think an extremely long separate discussion could be made on just that one point. For now, I'd like to talk about the legacy of this game and the few recent nods towards it. In the years since its release and outside of re-releases, Sega have very much kept the fires of Sonic Adventure alive and well. By the end of 2003, both Chaos and Gamma appeared as fully playable characters in the DS game Sonic Battle. In 2011, for Sonic's 20th anniversary, Sonic Adventure saw 2 stages represented in Sonic Generations. Speed Highway was entirely remade and reimagined for the game. Perfect Chaos also appeared as a boss encounter. Initially, the player is fooled into thinking that it will play out exactly as the original encounter did, but the gameplay is quickly mixed up when the player finds themselves navigating ruined buildings inside a flooded station square. Following the release of Generations, GE Entertainment released a plush toy of Chaos Zero. Chaos Zero would also appear in Sonic Forces, though this was just an illusion and not the real character. Jakks Pacific, though, did make a small nod to Sonic Adventure with their first wave of Sonic figures. The Dr. Eggman toy comes with a small accessory based on Gamma, which was the first piece of Gamma merchandise since the original Sonic Adventure Toyline. But one of the biggest pieces of legacy from the game, aside from being the foundation for all modern Sonic gameplay, has to be the Sonic Adventure music experience. First performed in Tokyo in 2016, the Sonic Adventure music experience is a rock concert that has typically been Crush 40, playing various songs and music pieces from the video game. Other performances include tracks from Sonic Adventure 2, Sonic Heroes, Generations, and at the 2019 performance in London, Team Sonic Racing was also included. I was actually really lucky to go to the London performance and I really enjoyed it. There's way too many highlights that I could recount, but one that I do really love is that at every performance of this concert, the crowd always chant for Big the Cat during the character select music sequence. And an almighty cheer typically erupts when it's selected. And right as I was editing this video together, Zen Monkey Studios have teased a new Sonic Adventure pin badge set for release later this year. And the second Sonic movie, whilst not being an adaptation of Sonic Adventure, has several scenes and imagery which certainly echo the strong visuals and memorable sequences from the game. So despite being 20 years old, Sonic Adventure has had such an impact that it's still being referenced to this day. I did consider talking about the number of references to previous Sonic titles in the game, but I think most of these are pretty obvious, except for one, which shows some incredible detail on the part of Sonic Team, and it really does illustrate the level of care that they do put into their games. Remember how a few moments ago I said this? This is Sonic the Hedgehog. No game in the series would ever have such a tiny Link. Well, this is actually a reference to a previous Sonic title that came out before Sonic Adventure did. Some of you are now probably thinking, which previous Sonic game does Amy do her grocery shopping? Well, you see, she doesn't, but he does. This image was included in Sonic the Screensaver, a fun little piece of software that included a number of original and unique artworks, including this one. We have Sonic the Hedgehog buying apples. Oh, isn't that sweet? But again, this is hardly a connection. Surely this is just another wild stretch. Well, take a look at the grocery bags that both Sonic and Amy are carrying, and you'll see that not only are the contents of the bags exactly the same, but so are the quantities of most of the items. We have apples and tomatoes, 2 French loaves, and 3 of these green things, which I assume are carrot leaves. Whoever designed the ending screen for Amy's campaign took direct reference from Sonic the Screensaver, a piece of software that was released 2 years earlier. Well anyway, jokes aside, I'd like to move on and talk about the game's impact on me when I first played it. I received Sonic Adventure and a Dreamcast for Christmas in 1999, and I was really excited to play a Sega console since I jumped from the Mega Drive to the PlayStation and I'd missed playing Sonic games. Whilst I found the initial opening cinematic really impressive and exciting, when I saw Sonic in a big city with humans, I was really confused and put off by it. There was so little explanation for what had happened between the classic 2D games and this one, it was really hard to initially get into. But I ended up playing the game a lot over Christmas and I really enjoyed it. In fact, I played the game so much that I actually broke the Dreamcast controller, so we had to get a replacement shortly after Christmas Day. I originally hated Knuckles and Big stages due to how dull I found them, and on top of that, Tails' stages felt way too similar to Sonic's, and I found Sonic's constant hey hey heys during Tails' stages really annoying.
Hey hey hey! Come on, Tails! Alright, Tails! Hey hey hey! You made it! Hooray!
Enough!
The Chao Garden, I absolutely hated, and I still don't like it. I like the idea of the concept, but the constant replaying of stages just to find one specific animal turns the whole game into a mindless grind. And then when you spend what feels like hours leveling up your Chao, you have such limited control and impact in the outcome, it just feels pointless. But as I've already mentioned, I absolutely loved Gamma's stages. Even back then, I thought it was fantastic. Along with some Sonic stages, I just had to replay them over and over just because I was having so much fun exploring them. Over time, I've really warmed more to Sonic Adventure, and I do recommend it to people who are new to the series, though I do warn them that some character introductions may seem a bit, wait, who's that? The game has a lot of depth to it, especially for the time, and especially compared to some of the recent entries into the series. When you analyse both the story and the gameplay, you can really see how clever the team was behind it, such as how almost every character in the game undergoes a clear positive change for the better, and how this is communicated both through the storyline and the actual gameplay itself. For example, Amy Rose starts out living alone, caring only for herself. The game places emphasis on her inability to save herself. We see a flashback to her in Sonic CD when she was completely helpless. She encounters the Flicky. Her first priority is to find Sonic who'll be able to help them instead of trying for herself. But eventually, she learns to stand up on her own. She realises that she can not only take care of herself, but also others who are weaker than she is.
You idiot! How could you do this? Now you're gonna get it!
There's a lot more to her and the other characters in the game, but that's for the follow-up video. The game hasn't aged too badly, but a lot of the visuals and certainly the animations and voice acting, as well as some game design decisions, they're quite outdated now. Aside from the DX version being most accessible, it does unfortunately have some major issues with collision detection, and characters can often clip through walls to their deaths. And the game's camera? Yes, it really was that bad at the time. Today, it's horrific. It is, however, still a really good game, but you do have to remind yourself that it is a very old game, which is using a lot of old design methodology. Looking at the second-hand market, the Dreamcast version goes for around £15 or $20. Let's say it's a must-have for any retro collection, but if you just want to play it, for only a couple of pounds or dollars, you can't go wrong with the PC version, definitely if you install mods to it. In fact, if you are looking to play Sonic Adventure, I honestly think that the best way to play it now is actually the DX version on Steam with the Sonic Adventure mod loader installed, and just pick their recommended mods. When I decided to replay Sonic Adventure for this video, I had no idea how advanced some of the mods for this game had become. What the modding community have done for this game is like literal magic. Sonic Adventure is 2 decades old, and I just cannot believe how the modding community has managed to enhance the natural beauty of this game, whilst also restoring lost features and maintaining the gameplay for modern standards. It truly is some wonderful work. The level of customization really is incredible. I cannot recommend the PC version enough, even with just the recommended mods installed alone. It really has transformed the game into something very special. Or just buy it and play Gamma's campaign. I can't recommend that one enough. So if you are one of the few people who have yet to play this title, give it a try and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. But if you're still not convinced, even if you have already played the game and you have an opinion on it, click the like, subscribe and the bell notification button on this video, because I plan to upload a second video about this game which will go much deeper into game design as well as narrative and literature theory in order to better understand how we as the player can critique the game and identify, as well as better communicate back to the developers, why a game makes us feel the way we do about it. It's all very well saying, I really like this particular stage, but can you clearly articulate why you feel that way and communicate that back to someone in a way that they can understand? As a small tease as to what to expect and what I mean by that, let's just take a quick look at this. The very first thing that the player does in this game is fight a boss. But outside of narrative and story reasons, have you ever wondered, why do you actually do this? Why is the very first thing that you do in this game fight a boss? Whilst it's not that uncommon a trope today, back in 1999, this was a very rare occurrence. Games didn't normally start with boss fights. So why does Sonic Adventure do this? Furthermore, for what is a very simple boss encounter, it's the most important encounter in the whole game. It's so carefully crafted that the player will enter this encounter and be given all the tools and the knowledge that they need to progress through the entire game. And they didn't even realise it. How did the developers do this? And why are so many people who play this boss encounter completely oblivious that this is what's happening to them? For the majority of people, they just defeated Chaos Zero. Other things that we'll discuss is how there's a clear symbiosis between each of the different characters' narratives and their different gameplay styles. But why is it that for some characters, this symbiotic relationship works better than it does for others? What is the reason for this? Is it down to the narrative, the gameplay, or is it some kind of middle ground between the two? And how do we identify and explain the reasons for it? And why is it that whilst the gameplay styles work really well for the most part, they do have their limitations? And could these limitations explain why we've never really had a Sonic game that gives the player this level of exploratory freedom compared to most modern Sonic game examples? How do we identify what these limitations are in order to try and explain why they might be a potential problem? And how about those character upgrades? Aside from the Lightspeed Dash, there's not really much. Wait, what do you mean that there's secret ways you could use them that literally change how certain sections of the game play out? And whilst I've mainly been positive in this video, I do have some critiques and complaints to make about the game, because it certainly isn't perfect, and it certainly does have its issues, which people do need to acknowledge, otherwise, if we're willing to just gloss over everything, we're not going to get many improvements over time. But outside of game design theory, in terms of storytelling, the wider lore and narrative detail, you'll probably either absolutely love or absolutely hate this particular stage, especially this part. And yet, for a stage that's so notorious, not many people realise that this stage has its own narrative which parallels that of the story which is running through it. And no, I'm not talking about just the mural at the end. There's far more subtle storytelling elements that exist within this one particular stage itself. A lot of people have probably even seen these things, but not actually realised that they're there. And then there's this. The Burger Man. Burger Man has become a bit of a meme to fans of the game. You can pretend to go on a date with him, throw him into the ocean, and you can even use him to glitch into places. But the Burger Man statue itself is actually a reference to two different things. The first reference is the more widely supported theory that the statue is a reference to a real-life event called The Curse of the Colonel, in which fans of a particular Japanese baseball team stole a statue depicting KFC's Colonel Sanders following a win and threw him into a lake, which then prompted a major losing streak for the team. But a second, lesser known reference and theory is that the statue is also a major supporting piece of mise-en-scène which helps cement a theory that Amy's campaign is actually a retelling, or rather parallel, to a famous movie that was very popular at the time, which was also used as an influence for several past Sonic titles. So if either of those things have caught your interest and you'd like to learn more about them, please do click the subscribe and the bell notification button. I won't promise you that my second video will somehow radically change your mind and will make you either love the video game or completely hate it, but I do promise you that I will get you to think a little bit more about the game in order to bring you to a higher level of critical thinking and understanding regarding both it and other video games. So, if you are interested in discovering more about this game, please click that like, subscribe, and the bell notification button. And also, please don't forget to leave a comment regarding the game. I'd love to read your thoughts about it. And also, if you happen to know anything about it that I've not covered in this particular video, please leave a comment explaining what it is I missed, because I love finding out new information about video games that I happen to like. So please do that, even if it's something really minor. I highly encourage it. But for now, thank you for taking the time to watch this video, and as always, I'll see you next time.
Hey guys, so I don't usually appear at the end of these videos, but for this one I felt it was important to make a pretty big exception to that. So this video took a very long time to produce and put together. In fact, there's so much out there that I wanted to put into this video but just couldn't do for time. In fact, a few days ago, this thing turned up. It's the Sonic Adventure Character Style Guide. I like it because if you look inside the pages, yeah, they're cut out in the shape of the different Sonic characters. Look, there was Tails, there's Amy, and there's Knuckles, and there's Dr. Eggman, and look, he's actually cut out in his moustache, and there's Big the Cat, and look, the Chao is actually also cut out. This is very important, very important. So I just want to take a moment to personally thank a lot of my fellow collaborators. Ooh, that makes us sound really sinister, as if we're secretly plotting something. So I just want to thank my fellow content creators out there. Big thank you to Nick of Game Apologist for his narration, but a massive thank you goes out to Bex, better known as Trista Byte, who was absolutely instrumental in convincing so many people that it was a good idea to do a little dance in a video about Sonic Adventure. But I have to highlight one, this guy, who you might recognise as Nico Hart, yep, the A streamer who does a lot with the steering wheel. So the brief was, could you please do 3 to 5 seconds of you dancing to Everybody's Supersonic Racing? He'd interpreted that as 3 to 5 hours of dancing to Everybody's Supersonic Racing. I've got so much footage of this guy dancing, I don't know what to do with it. Why won't you stop dancing? Coffee Dubs, Chow Mix, Sarah Obscura, Sonic the Cosplayer, Tales from iDef, there's just so many people. I'm probably missing some out. I really genuinely apologise. I don't have an auto cue. My notes are pinned over there and I can't see them from here. But a huge thank you to everybody that helped make this video. It really was a massive project and I couldn't have done it without all of your support. So this is kind of the direction I really like my channel to go in future. If you've been a subscriber for a while, you know that I do these really in-depth looks at video game history. Well, I thought, what happens if I apply that thinking to the video games themselves? And you can actually discover and unearth a lot of really cool things, so I really want to expand more upon that. We'll be looking at other various Sonic games, of course. I think Sonic Adventure 2 is a given, but hey, who knows what we'll come up with down the road. So this does mean that my videos will take a lot longer to produce, because this takes a hell of a long time to actually research all of this and compile it into a video and release. Like, we're talking months for a single subject. So if you do like this kind of video and you'd like to see more like it, please click that like, subscribe, and the bell notification button. And also, and guys, I can't say this without sounding like I'm begging here, but please, if you have been on the fence, please consider supporting me on Patreon, or maybe just giving me a one-off coffee donation tip, because yeah, this does take a lot of time, and it is a very, very big cost thing as well, so anything you can to support the work I do is very greatly appreciated and will help keep the lights on and basically help keep me alive. So yeah, if you can, please do that. Otherwise, something else that you can do, which is a huge help, please consider sharing this video. Like if you're a member of any I don't know, Sonic or Sega or even general video game subreddits or interesting videos, whatever, please consider posting it there. Facebook, do people still visit forums these days? I don't know. Literally, anyway, just share it with people who you think would be interested, or even people that you think will disagree with stuff I say. I'm really interested to see the other side of the coin. Like, I've been quite positive in this video, but some people really don't like this game. I really want to hear the thoughts on that one as well, because then that'll help me think more about, oh yeah, I didn't really consider that, you know, that kind of thing. It's really important to have that two-way conversation. And of course, it goes without saying, a huge thank you and loads of appreciation goes out to my current Patreon supporters. Seriously guys, you guys are amazing. Thank you so much for your support over the last few months. It really has been incredible. I should really send you guys something as a thank you. Yes, I'm going to do that. I'm going to look into sending you guys something as a thank you for all your support, because I really genuinely do appreciate it. And your names, of course, as always, are flying up the screen either now or at some point whilst I've been talking. I've been talking for a while, I really know that. Anyway guys, a huge thank you to every single one of you who's been watching this video. If you've got any suggestions for other games I should cover, I hear Sonic Adventure has a sequel, and I hear that people have opinions on Sonic Forces and a few other various video games, as well as some non-Sonic and Sega games as well. Please, there's nothing off the table this time. We're going to look at absolutely everything. So thank you very much for watching. Thank you so much for your support lately. It really has been wonderful. Please click that like, subscribe, and the bell notification button, and I'll see you guys again next time. Goodbye.